The Commission of Inquiry on Land has unearthed massive rot in the ownership and management of land. A cartel of well-connected and powerful individuals have also been accused of grabbing land from the underclass. Will the findings be relied upon to deliver justice to those who are the victims, and will this inquiry resolve inherent problems in Uganda's complex land tenure system? On the spot tonight is the chairperson of the Commission of Inquiry, Lady Justice Catherine Bamugemerere, and Commissioner Mary Oduka Ochan. My Lord, Lady Justice Catherine Bamugemerere, thank you for honoring our invitation. You're on the spot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kamara. Good evening, viewers.
Commissioner Mary Oduka, thank you also for honoring our invitation. Welcome to the show. You're on the spot tonight, together with Lady Justice Bamugemerere.
Thank you, and good evening, viewers.
The subject we're getting into, my Lord, is such a big issue for Uganda. In February, you handed over an interim report of the Commission of Inquiry in Land Management, the acquisition, registration, and all this to the President. Could you, as we begin, maybe give us a nutshell of what you did unravel?
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to say that it pleased the President of this country to set up a commission of inquiry to investigate the effectiveness of the law, the processes, and the procedures in land acquisition, land administration, land management, and land registration in Uganda. The reasons for his setting it up might be multifarious, but it is important to know that in the history of Uganda, this is the first judicial commission of inquiry into land. Being the first judicial commission of inquiry, we have a huge duty to, for the first time, answer the land questions that haven't been answered since the other commission of inquiry, which wasn't judicial, that happened in 1924 under Governor Mitchell. You see, in 1924, there was a commission of inquiry to address the problems of the 1900 agreement. Because when the 1900 agreement was entered, it wasn't envisaged that there would be a problem on the land between the landlords and the occupants. But when there was envisaged a problem, and when the problem happened, the governor then instituted a commission of inquiry, which resulted into the Imvujo and Busulu, or Busulu and Imvujo laws of 1928. Now, since then, there has been no other commission of inquiry, and we are the next commission of inquiry, and this time it's judicial. Now, when this commission of inquiry was set up, it was set up with terms of reference. Let me just point out a few. Our terms of reference are to investigate and inquire into the laws, the processes, and the procedures by which land is registered and administered in Uganda. To investigate and inquire into the role and effectiveness of the Uganda Land Commission and how the land fund is managed. To investigate and inquire and review the effectiveness of relevant bodies that govern the management of wetlands, of forests, game reserves, and other protected areas in this country, and come up with effective recommendations. To investigate, inquire, and solicit views into how traditional, cultural, and other religious institutions who have large tracts of land manage their land, particularly with occupants, and also to find out how the relationships between the occupants and these traditional, cultural, and religious organizations can be made better. to investigate and inquire into the legal and policy framework for land acquisition, to investigate and inquire and identify the effectiveness of the dispute resolution systems for persons who are involved in land disputes. And then, of course, the Commission has got the mandate to investigate any other issues incidental to any of the above. And finally, the Commission is mandated to make recommendations. And some of the recommendations are law reform related. In others could be administrative reforms or reforms that lead to penal sanctions. Now, when these terms of reference are set out, we are then expected to work within this framework. And also, at the setup of this commission, these terms of references and the setup of the commission is gazetted. We are also given a time frame. Now, one of the rules in the statutory instrument was that somewhere mid-term, we were to hand over an interim report.
And this is what you did in February?
That is what we did in February, and that is what we had tried to do earlier, and we hadn't managed to do. But I suffice is to say that an interim report is handed over to the appointing authority, who is the President of the Republic of Uganda. It is his document giving him a status report of where the Commission is at the point it's handing over the interim, asking him for a policy direction and a political steer in terms of the work, the actual work of the Commission. Not so much to steer how we do it, but to sort of get a direction from the person who appointed you, to just make sure you
have the terms of reference. What do you mean the direction?
No, in terms, what I mean by direction is
from the president.
From the president.
Because you're supposed to be an independent body.
Exactly.
Doing an investigation.
And we are really independent,
Yeah, what
if you
direction
like.
do you mean?
By direction I mean is to let him know this is how far we've gone. At that point, at the point we handed over the interim, we actually had a few months before our term would expire. And we wanted to understand where that would leave all the people that we have handled. At the time we handed over this report, we had 4,900 applicants or people who have come, complainants to the Commission. And we wanted to understand from him, before we leave, what is the political steer towards those Ugandans who have trusted this Commission? Where do we leave them?
Talking about trusting the commissions, we've had a number of commission of inquiry reports, and most of them are still gathering dust wherever they are.
That's right.
My Lord, do you have confidence that whatever you're going to gather, recommendations you get, considering the history and the experience of our country, that these things will be acted upon?
Thank you very much for that question. I have, as you know, this is not my first commission of inquiry.
Yes.
And indeed, I have seen quite a few things. I have experienced and gone through a number of things. One is some of the recommendations of a commission do get implemented. Others probably not fully. The one thing that I think is consoling is that a commission of inquiry always has an impact on the organization upon which it is conducted. And the other thing is to understand that a report is a very permanent fixture in the life of anybody, of any organ or organism in a country. Although you may not see the results of a commission today, you can be sure that one day posterity will read it. But it suffices to say, for instance, that in many of the commissions that have been handled, even when for instance, you thought that the report was quashed and all was not probably fully implemented, a lot of changes did take place. The URA report, for instance, I did some research on it. It is one of the most implemented reports, although it was actually quashed in a court of law. So effectively it was quashed, but practically it was implemented. There was total change of the organization. UNRWA, there was a total change of the organization. So it is possible to get the general euphoria that it is not implemented, but actually in real terms, they do get quite implemented.
But that report in UNRWA also said we lost almost 4 trillion or 10 trillion shillings in a period of about 10 years.
8 trillion.
8 trillion shillings. That's a colossal sum of money.
It is. It
Yes.
sounds, yes.
And when you say it was acted upon, somebody would say maybe we'll be recovering the money, because it was about the money that we lost as a country.
And we do have faith that, and hope. We live in the hope that one of these days we probably will see some people go to court. I think it's not over.
You really think and believe, my lord, that 8 trillion Uganda shillings that was reported to have gotten lost in the UNRWA or the road sector can actually be recovered?
I think it's not so much as looking for the penny. It is more as in seeing whether there was organizational change. Has the character of the organization changed? Have certain activities been interrupted? Because you see, when you interrupt, for instance, a corrupt organization, if you interrupt it fundamentally, by the time it gathers again to come back, you will have gained some ground.
So you can tell Ugandans watching you tonight that all these commissions have been of value to them.
They have been of value,
All
and
right.
they should be of value.
During the inquiry, my lord, there was a pattern backed by evidence that the rich and powerful were using their clout to grab land. Their victims faced threats of being killed and tortured. How in all this can the common person be protected?
Thank you very much. We have conducted a commission of inquiry in the full glare of the press and of the public. And everybody is able to follow with us the happenings in the commission. Although I must say that that is just a tip of the iceberg of what we actually handle in the commission. Let me say that it would be probably preposterous of me to assume that I know what will happen to every case. In fact, it would be preposterous of me to assume that I know everything that is going on with any particular case. We do hope, and we have seen in some cases, that some incidents of what would have been evictions were stopped in the middle. We have seen incidents where some people have been actually taken back to the land. We've also seen incidents where people may never be taken back to the land. And we can't tell what will happen in any particular case. And again, as you know, we're a little bit limited because we are not a court of law. We do not make orders. We do not decide, for instance, that we will return land to a particular party. That kind of declaration we are not mandated to make. But within our limited parameters as a commission of inquiry, we have been able to bring to the fore, to expose, and sometimes to forestall a lot of evictions.
So the biggest thing that this commission can give us is to expose. I want also to know what is going to be the end game of this commission.
Right. Like I said at the beginning, the end game is a report. The end game are the recommendations that will be in the report. The end game will be the observations and the findings. And all those, the observations, the findings, the recommendations, will then be sent to the appointing authority. It is hoped that in the end, the appointing authority will cause the necessary government officials to write a white paper. And when the white paper is written, it will be discussed in cabinet. And recommendations can be accepted, recommendations can be denied. So they don't have to accept all the recommendations of the commission, but where they do, then they can be implemented. So in the hope that the findings the observations, the findings and recommendations of the Commission coincide with the needs of that particular public, and the eventual white paper recommendations, then probably some of those problems you're talking about, like indemnifying the people who have been hurt, might work out. We've also had cases actually what have been mediated, where parties have said we would like to settle this, even if we are before a commission.
Commissioner Mary, if I may bring you in here, because you have also been on this commission. In your view, how rotten is the land management and ownership scenario in Uganda? You've been almost every major town in this country.
It is true that we've been to a number of towns in this country, and we've met with a number of relevant stakeholders, including those who are responsible for managing the land sector in this country. There are challenges. There are challenges. I wouldn't want to say it is totally rotten. There are challenges, and I believe that those challenges are issues that we are at the moment investigating. It is still work in progress. We haven't yet reached a conclusion to say how rotten it is, because as you are aware, we haven't yet been throughout the country, but we've been to a good portion of the country. And we're seeing similar trends in the country. So we can, to a certain degree, say, yes, we do have challenges in the country, but it isn't challenges that are unsurmountable, that we cannot address with a few reforms here and there. And we think that the other thing that we have succeeded in doing is awakening the public's attention to also understanding what the issues are and how they themselves can also hold their people, those who are responsible, accountable to delivering what they ought to deliver. So even that awareness to the people, to the stakeholders, is, I think, something that one would say is an achievement. Well, so yes, there are issues. We're not running away from that. There are issues. There are issues with from the headquarters. There are issues at the district level. There are issues, as you earlier said, with landowners themselves. There are issues we have seen with multiple titling. There are issues with multiple interests on land. So some are to do with management. Some are to do with the structure. Some are also to do with the law.
Okay, we have had testimonies implicating law enforcement officers in grabbing land, yet they are meant to protect the underclass. Do you think, Commissioner Mary, that we should establish a special land protection police force of upright officers to oversee sanity and protect the underprivileged?
Well, it's true what has been witnessed, that there have been some challenges there, but I don't think that as a commission we're yet at the point where we can make such recommendations or such decisions. We're still, at the information gathering stage, and we need to still gather more information on that.
Should I look forward to this kind of recommendation?
We're glad that you've actually made that recommendation. That's your proposal. So it is something that we will definitely consider. And yes, thank you for the proposal.
My Lord, Uganda has a complex land tenure system which lacks uniformity. Is this a bottleneck to investment, and will you recommend for its overhaul?
Uganda has a constitutional regime that affects the tenure system. Under our constitution, we have 4 tenures. We have what is known as the customary tenure. We have what is known as the Milo tenure. We have the freehold tenure, and we have the leasehold tenure. I think what is important about the tenures is that they are 3 of the tenures give you land for perpetuity, give you land forever and ever. 1 tenure is time-based, that is the leasehold. Now, as a commission, what we would like to see is that these tenures are simplified. There should be a simplification. There should be a standardization. There should be a harmonization. There should be a way in which historical issues around these tenures minimized so that there can be a real security on the land. Because I think the most important thing about a tenure system is if it provides security for the person sitting on the land.
My lord, I know you have been quoted for having suggested a radical shift as far as the Milo land is concerned. But since I do not really remember what the exact quote was, and now that you're here, what did you suggest on the Milo land?
First of all, I would like to correct the impression. We have never suggested or recommended that the Milo land should be abolished. I just would like to correct that impression, because I know it's been going around, and there's been a lot of traction on building up around whether this commission would like to abolish. Nobody is abolishing a tenure here.
How would you standardize it?
How would we standardize it? All we want to make sure is that the tenure system is affected in such a way that the state or the government, for that reason, is able to ensure that nobody remains without hope on the land. Let me give you a simple situation. We have situations where persons believe they are living as bona fide occupants, as people who have dwelt on this piece of land for 200 years by so many generations. And somebody wakes up in the morning one day, gets a freehold title, or gets a Milo title, or gets a transfer of a Milo title, and suddenly decides that this person is found on the land, or this whole village is found on the land, and not fit to be there. And let me tell you something else. This type of thing, it doesn't happen on just one tenure. It happens on all of them. On leasehold, on Milo, on freehold. In Gulu, in Apar, in Mbale, Bulambuli, in Kasese, in Luero, Nakasongola, Mubende, everywhere. The question the government needs to answer is, what can we do with the situation where somebody wants to use a piece of land, but there are occupants on it? Is there a way that the state can assure the tenancy of those dwelling on the land? And that is what we have been trying to say. Let us harmonize this. Let us make it simpler so that the persons are able either to get a loan, as was the idea of the land fund. They're able to buy the loan and buy themselves off this landlord, or the state is able to pay the landlord and leave the people in peace. But we were suggesting that this should be done over a long period of time, systematically, district by district, piece by piece, and then so that within a particular period, everybody is secure wherever they are.
My lord, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll be looking at some hot beds where the land issue is quite a big problem in the Rwenzori between the Bakonjo and the Basongora, in Rwamutonga, in Ohio. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara, and my guests tonight are the chairperson of the Commission of Inquiry on Land, Lady Justice Catherine Bamgemerere, and Commissioner Mary Oduka Ochan. We have some hot spots in Uganda as far as land conflicts are concerned. I want to bring your attention to the Rwenzori region. Right. You have the Basongora and the Bakonjo in conflict because of the historical injustices, I should say, that they suffered. Part of Basongora land, which is quite a big chunk, was turned into Queen Elizabeth National Park. You have part of the bigger land that has government prison and government investments. Of course, part of it is just a mountain, and part of it is are two lakes.
That's right.
And the two communities engage in different economic livelihoods that sometimes they can even clash. In the next 10 or 20 years, the land is not going to increase, but we can be sure the Bakonjo and the Basongora and all the people who are there will double, triple many times over. What on earth can be done to sort such a problem?
That's a very unique problem indeed. And we were fortunate enough to go to the Rwenzori region, and we visited both communities, and also we spoke to them, both the Basongora community and the other communities, Banyavindi and Bakonjo and the others. And obviously what you're saying is really true, that they are different communities. The Banyavindi and the Bakonjo would have been ideally mountainous people, but as history had it, I am told that when they were under the Toro Kingdom, there was a cotton growing program that brought them downhill. And at the time it brings them downhill, the Basongora are away from the lowlands and took a sojourn, I think, in Congo for a while. And they also then got into a lot of activity, and that history is very clear. The Basongora are typically cattle keepers. They are nomads, and that is how they managed to go find better pasture in the Congo region. Unfortunately for them, when they moved out of the Queen Elizabeth Park and went into Congo, they didn't envisage that the other side of the park in Congo would be made a game park. And then they found that they had to come back. And when they came back, the Ugandan side was now a game park as well. There have been government programs, very well thought out, cabinet meetings, cabinet resolutions, and also ministerial teams that have been sent. And I think there's a lot of policy guideline on how they were to resettle the Basongora and then the Bakonjo and Banyavindi. And for sure, there are a few spots of bother that are not yet clear. But I think that it is not a problem that can't be solved, just like there is no problem that can't be solved. If people,
there's one, my lord, that was never solved for the case of the residents of Kaweri in Mubende.
Right.
Because they were pushed away from their land by an investor, and then they went to court. I think they even won the case, but I don't think the judgment was acted upon.
The Kaweri case is very unique because the judgment was as unique as the case itself. And so we have a judgment, and then we have the actual situation on the ground. It is one of those cases that gives you a contestation between development, industrialization, and human dwellings, and normal livelihood. And yes, it is not a good thing when you go to Kaweri and they look like they're two worlds, and there seems to be an electric line dividing the Kaweri coffee factory and the rest of the community. And the idea that these people look over the other side and say that was once our home, and that livelihoods were completely disrupted. Children left school, girls became pregnant, fathers became unemployed, marriages broke down, and some of them became beggars and have never recovered.
On the ancestral land? On the
ancestral land. No, but when we talked to them, I think we got a feeling, and we did talk to the management of Kaweri about the stark reality of thinking that you're living that community that once lived where you are in the state in which they are. And we left Mubende with a commitment from both sides that they were going to mediate to mitigate on what has already gone wrong. And we are in that process.
Again, how did you even get confidence that that can be done if there was a court decision, a judgment that was never acted upon, and you think now they are going to act upon on what they told you? You believe them?
You know, it is, as a judge, it's very difficult for me to comment on a judgment of another justice. So I would like to not comment. Okay,
but let me bring
but I think
to
it
the
goes beyond
attention
the law.
of Commissioner Mary, who's not a judge. Commissioner Mary, I want us to shed a light on a similar case in the Mount Elgon area among the Ndorobo community. People who are also mountainous, living in the forest, enjoying their habitat in the way how they know it, but now they find themselves displaced. They are living in a squeezed place down the valley, their livelihood disrupted. I mean, how do you divide, balance ecosystem protection, the human rights, and the livelihood of the people? What I saw, Mount Elgon, it looks like the government of Uganda chose to protect the animals and the trees more than the people that lived on that land.
Well, probably before I even respond to the Ndorobo question, I thought that I could add something more on the Rwenzori that you asked earlier on, my lordship, on. While we were there, something that we thought was positive that was developing among the two communities was their willingness to also explore other ways of obtaining livelihoods. For example, what was interesting to us and something that we feel could be pursued further is the Bakonzo trying to look at their way of nomadhood, in considering that even their population is increasing, the population of their cattle is increasing. Not the Bakonzo, the Basongora. The population of their cattle is also increasing, so they cannot continue with their livelihood the way they were living before in the nomadhood. And that is coming from them rather than being imposed on them. And I thought that that was something positive that could be pursued further. Likewise, the Bakonzo also, particularly among the younger generation that we met, they were actually appealing for support to help them explore other avenues of livelihood rather than just the farming. And they came up with a number of suggestions that we feel that if government was able to pursue that, then even though, as you correctly said, population is increasing, the land is not increasing, that if these other areas of livelihood were explored, they could still live together.
But the government of Uganda has scored badly when it comes to improving the livelihoods of the people, empowering the young people. We have almost 80% unemployment among the young people. We have a jobless generation. Well,
we don't dispute the fact that, yes, we have a large population of young people that are jobless. But what I'm saying is more interesting in this case is that this is coming from the youth themselves. They are not really waiting for government to come up with suggestions on how they can improve their livelihoods. The support that they would want is probably a little resources to help them start on it. But they're interested in doing something for themselves, which is positive. And I believe that with support from not only government, but also civil society and all those who are around, that something can be done. Then coming back to the Ndorobo people, yes, it is true that how balancing the ecosystem, people's livelihoods, the game parks and protecting animals, that is a task that needs a lot of attention yet. And we are still exploring. We haven't yet arrived at a conclusion as to what we can recommend to government to ensure that these government is able to balance with the community. And I think one thing that we discovered is that probably there's need to involve the community themselves more in the decision making. But as I said, we haven't yet reached a conclusion on that, but we believe that we shall.
And before, maybe the last of the hotspots, because I suppose in the Alberton Graben, it's likely also to become a hotspot. There's an area called Rwamutonga.
Right.
And the people there have also been displaced and treated in a manner that is horrendous. I wonder what the Commission is going to recommend. But also, that people who had information about what was under the Albertine Graben, because for positions of where they worked in the ministries, went and bought land because the Banyoro did not have that information. They sold it so cheaply. At the end of the day, those who bought, yes, of course they had the money and there was a willing seller, have amassed wealth, which is likely to cause some conflict in the future and maybe take us back to the curse they talk about, the oil curse.
The Albertine Graben is a very interesting study in terms of just investigating how the discovery of a resource can cause a land rush, can cause issues with land acquisition, can change the way and the manner in which people live. Indeed, the discovery of oil in this area did not just end with the discovery of oil, but led to land speculation, led to a land rush, led to instant ability by those who thought they could to go and try and title any piece of land that they could find. I'm told, because we handled some of that matters to some extent. There was a case, I think, one of a person who had 8 square miles. But I think, and there have been court judgments, and in one of the court judgments, this person who rushed to acquire title on the 8 square miles, I think, had his title cancelled, and that whole process reversed. Of course, it wasn't without pain to the people, because they had spent years and trying to just achieve that justice. But it's a great place to learn from in terms of what not to do when that happens to a particular area. And in terms of land acquisition, that area has learned a lot. And the international organizations that have come in, the investors, the direct financiers have learned what not to do. It is actually a good lesson, because they have had to reverse some of the decisions they had taken in order to accommodate the communities. And that if they had given in to all the whims of speculators, land rushers, greedy and unthinking people, it would have left most of the communities much worse than they are. But there are situations that are not resolved, like the Ramutonga. They are not yet resolved. And they have led to a loss, both to the investor and to the community. Both of them have lost. And the lessons to be drawn there are a bit tough. Tough in the sense that when you're dealing with a situation where you want to attract direct foreign investment into an extremely rural area, you must go about it in a collaborative manner. But we are still investigating. We haven't really got to the end of this. But the lessons that are to be learned are very many. And I think it provides very good fodder for the rest of the country on what not to do.
This inquiry is kind of complex in a way, but have you had threats from those implicated, and have they also offered you bribes?
Interesting question. Thank you very much. We have had threats and real situations. When we moved out on our first trip outside of Kampala, we had to immediately change our budget and provide for witness protection, because as soon as we arrived in the first town we went to, our witnesses were harassed and threatened and actually physically grabbed and beaten, so we had to protect them. In the next town, we had an acid attack.
Mbarara.
In Mbarara. And again, because we had witness protection in mind, we had to get, again, resources to help. We've helped as much as we can as a government institution with a limited budget. The other day I got a letter from the victim. It was very touching. The victim of the acid attack, Mr. Katureve, he said he wouldn't be alive if the commission hadn't helped him. I felt that his gratitude and magnanimity towards the commission, I think, is greater than even what it comes. But I think we've had those. We've had issues. We've had threats against the commission itself.
So is this the kind of work that you think maybe has changed your life in Uganda forever?
It has. It has changed many people's lives. It has changed my life. It has changed. You grow with things. You grow every time you get through something. Yes, you do. And we've had to invest a lot in security. And if I may say,
Mary, so moving forward, do you feel like an individual that forever you'll be walking, looking behind your shoulders?
Not in that way.
Not in that way, no. And just to say, the threats that you asked aren't only the threats that the chair mentioned, but the threats have come in various forms.
Yes.
We have had people threaten to go to court to stop the commission work altogether. That's a threat.
That's a good threat.
That's a threat.
That's a threat to the work. We've had threats to some of our witnesses, as the chair said. Some have been physical, some have been through phones. We've had commissioners getting threatening telephone calls from unknown sources. We've had some commissioners followed, but that doesn't threaten us. We say we know what we're doing. We know what we're called to do.
We live in a country, my lord, where at one moment a cabinet minister asked, I think it was a commission of inquiry, and I remember it must have been a principal judge, that where were you when we were fighting? We are children of the revolution. So if you are stepping on the toes of the children of the revolution, and they can tell a principal judge, where were you? What does it make you feel?
Well, it is not an easy one to deal with. And just to recap on the other one about the bribery. And again, bribery and corruption these days come dressed up in all sorts of fashions and faces. And the face of corruption is changing quite a lot. And the corrupt do fight back, and they fight back real hard. And I can tell you that I have a very, very good commission. I have very good commissioners. They are so committed to their job. We are also committed. And I think if we were not single-minded and committed, the issue of bribery would have probably got to us. Because definitely land and the property have deep pockets. But because we have a group of dedicated people who have their heads decided, who have their minds made up, who are doing a job with one, if you like, with one heart, we can push on. But back to your question. Indeed, it is very, very easy to get distracted. It is very easy to lose the direction. But it is always important to come back to why you are doing this job, and the greatest benefit. For whom is the greatest benefit of a commission of inquiry? For whom is the greatest good? When you see a victim of land eviction, come back and say thank you. A victim of that acid attack, say thank you. The other day we had a lady who said she saw us hand over the interim report, and she thought that the commission had closed, and she said her pressure went up and she wanted to see her doctor because her pressure was really going up. And then the next day she realized we were still around, and she got hope and came to the commission and told her story, and her hope came back. The other day also we got a very sad phone call of children in a village called Mutima, I think, or somewhere around Zimbabwe. Unfortunately, these children didn't leave a phone number, but they told us a very sad story. They said their mother had committed suicide because she had seen the commission hand over a report to the president, and they thought the commission had ended, and so had their hope. And we now have a duty, a heavy duty, to go find this family and see whether we can just bring back that hope and deal with the situation on the ground in that particular area of Zimbabwe where somebody is actually pushing these really needy and helpless and helpless Ugandans off the land.
Okay. There are some people who own big chunks of land, probably to almost half of an entire district, some districts which are small. Perhaps, in your opinion, Commissioner Mary, is it high time Uganda enacted a law to limit the acreage one can own as an individual?
I think as a commission, we've actually been discussing this, and we're discussing it with a view not really so much as to whether land there should be a limitation on the size of land that a citizen can hold, because the Constitution allows a citizen to hold land and it does not limit the amount of land that one can hold. But what we would like to see is that whatever land is being held, it is put to use and to effective use, because we see that land is a right for a citizen. Land it gives an identity to a people, and land should be used as a productive means for people. So we're not focusing so much on the size, but what are they doing with that land? Because yes, when it comes to, for example, the absentee landlords in Kibale, and that land is not being used by the absentee landlord, and it can be effectively used by the bona fide occupants. That's why we're encouraging, the land fund to be used so that the people who are on the land can make effective use of the land. So we would not want to see land lying idle, rather than, because you could have a small piece of land lying idle, and that wouldn't benefit anybody either. So we're not focusing so much on land size, but the effective use of land.
The land law, my lord, that gives, I think, security of tenancy, security of tenants for those who have lived. I remember they had lived on land for about 12 years. They become bona fide occupants. If somebody came on my land and stayed there for 12 years, and the law gives him or her the right to be a bona fide occupant, yes, it is a law, but is it a good law?
That's an interesting question. But also, that's a question that actually resonates with who we are as an African people. The issue of occupancy as an African society is not actually so much about years even. But if we go back to the law first, the law as it stands now, the 1998 Land Act as amended, recognizes a bona fide occupant as a person who had lived on the land 12 years prior to the making of the 1995 Constitution. So that would go back to 1983, I think. Now, the same law, not the same act, but under the law, because we have different sources of law in Uganda.
And 1993, 82, my lord, is the time when we saw massive migration into Buganda, for example.
Actually.
And to these areas that were more or less landless, and now people have settled, and now they have crafted a law that gives them security of tenancy, and the people in Buganda are saying, wait a minute, you have grabbed our land using the law.
Actually, it gets worse than that, because we are a common law country. As a common law country, we also apply case law as a source of law. So the cases that courts decide are parts of our law. And under common law, we recognize adverse ownership of land. If you live on land uninterrupted for 12 years. It doesn't matter if it was before or after the 1995 Constitution. If from today, counting back 12 years, you have been living on that piece of land, nobody has stopped you, nobody has said it's not yours, nobody has asked you to leave, nobody has gone to court and said you're trespassing, you actually have adverse rights over the owner of the land. So in a way, it is not just the law, the Land Act, it is also the applied law. And what it is that it means you must have effective ownership of land. Land, you know, is not, as you rightly noted at the beginning, land is not growing. Land is actually getting less. So where there is land that's not being used, somebody is going to use it. The question is, are you going to be the type of landlord that forgets about your land for 12 years and somebody settles on it? And if they do, then you have to contend with the fact that they get adverse rights over your land.
And you're okay with that?
I think in terms of, you've got to deal with it in terms of policy. You've got to deal with it in terms, because that means therefore that if they have adverse rights over your land, again, the same law, the Land Act, would suggest that you have to agree with the tenant on how him or you get off the land. He can choose. You give him the first right to buy, for instance. If you want to sell your land, and this is something many landlords are not doing right now. Many of the cases of forced evictions, the landlords don't want to listen to the fact that they should have been giving the tenant the first right to buy. So you ask him if he wants to buy, you name the price. If he can't afford the price, then you go to the next buyer. But also, in terms of a bona fide occupant, you can't, if he doesn't want to sell you, then you can't take him off the land. We have the interesting cases where there is an island in the middle of a huge plantation because that person will not move and he's a bona fide tenant. And you got to respect their rights.
My Lord and Commissioner Mary, we are going to take a break. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara, and my guests tonight are, I have the chairperson of the Commission of Inquiry on Land, Lady Justice Catherine Bamugemereire, and Commissioner Mary Oduka Ochan. I can imagine as you traverse the country and ask the questions and meet the witnesses and all these, but you probably have also discovered that the people who are disturbing the underprivileged, of course, are the rich, the famous, and the powerful. And what does that tell you about those in positions of leadership? And perhaps they have misused them and taken advantage of them to steal, to amass wealth and also grab land.
That's a very wide question. And true, we have encountered situations where persons who are better placed, who are in probably high-ranking offices, armed forces, or just have a better pass, appear to have had an upper hand and maybe taken advantage of the less privileged. But again, let me also add, we've also had situations where a person who would appear to be privileged, has resources, is actually taken advantage of by the state and consequently by the society around him and loses property. We've also had situations where we've had, for instance, royal families who feel that they have been disadvantaged. We've also had situations where, we've had situations where Namasole land is an issue. We've had situations where kingdom land is being encroached on or church land is being encroached on. So it's a mixed bag of situations. But it leads to questions that are just wider than whether it is a few rich men or few entitled public servants or armed personnel doing this. I think it's a wider question of impunity, the ability of our system to punish just anybody, just about anybody. It doesn't matter if you're high or if you're low, just about anybody. And is our system capable? Is our courts capable? Is the police capable? Is the local council system capable? And because this impunity cuts through, then you have also the problem of systems and corruption within the land offices themselves. A complete nuisance there, and again, that is a different type of impunity that also needs to be dealt with. So it's a real mixed bag of so many things that need to be put right, and then in a whole system that needs to be put straight.
My Lord, there has been a concern that the Commission has spent colossal sums of money. Unfortunately, they don't have the figure, but they say astronomical during the probe, which is still ongoing. Ugandans are watching tonight. If you look at them, can you tell them that there has been value for their money?
Actually, I would wish to ask them whether they believe there has been no value for their money. For one thing, we are...
There's already a concern.
Yes.
In fact, some are saying 13 billion. I didn't want to say that because I'm not sure about the figure.
And let me first of all say a few things. I know at least 4 government ministries, departments or agencies who receive a maximum of 3,000 cases, but their budgets are 40 billion and above. We have received 5,600 cases as of now in 11 months. We have traversed this whole country, I think except West Nile, which we hope, God willing, we might do before we close. We have carried out very thorough investigations. Our investigations are not cheap. When people see what looks like a well choreographed case on camera, they should understand that before we get there, there is a lot of background work. First of all, we send the first teams, go pick information. The next team goes to investigate. Another team goes to cross-check. Information is returned to the Commission. That information is sieved through. The Commission itself you lift a whole commission, and again, the investigation team, you go to a particular town, you go to Kasese, for instance, or you go to Gulu, or you go to Luero. You camp there for 1 week. You hear out the cases. You listen to the people. This is not a cheap operation.
It's not a cheap operation, my Lord, because you didn't only travel in this country, but you also went to the United Kingdom. And one would ask, couldn't you maybe have used technology by research, use an email and get information as opposed to take the commission to the UK? It is true,
and I'm proud to say that we can account for every penny. Right now, I can tell you that we don't actually have an accountability problem. Unfortunately, I don't want to join those who debate in the media or issues that actually are not there. And I am not the accounting officer of the Commission, but I can tell you, because I know I am the chair, there is an accounting officer. There is an accounting officer in the Ministry of Lands. There is a PSST. Between those 3 people, they will tell you there is no accounting problem with the Commission.
Yes, but so, the issue, my Lord, the issue is not the accounting, the issue was whether it was necessary.
Yes, we agreed on a work plan From the first day the commission started, this work plan was discussed with the President, the Minister of Finance, the PSST, the Ministry of Lands, which is our mother ministry in terms of accounting. Every place we were going to was mapped right from day one. Every shilling was budgeted for. I can tell you that we actually were supposed to have used the money that we are supposed to have used, are said to have used. We were supposed to have used it in the first 6 months. That money didn't show up. We trudged on, stretched as much as we could in order to accommodate ourselves for 11 months in a budget that was meant for 6 months. And if there was anybody who would have been screaming, it would have been the commission, but we're not screaming.
So you have been frugal?
Extremely frugal, and it has been painful. Painful to the staff, painful to just for us to watch that we could have done more for the people and we couldn't do it.
My Lord, allow me, I open the lines. Ugandans are watching. I'm sure they have questions or maybe even a testimony. The lines are on your screens, so you can pick a phone and call us. As the lines are there. I'm going to take a very first call online that I have. Hello, I have a call online. Hello?
Hello.
Yes, good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from?
This is Emma calling. I'm calling from Makerere.
Yes, Emma, you're on air.
Yes, I would like to agree that there are only 3 factors that can qualify someone as a bona fide occupant.
Okay.
I'm Emmanuel Chero calling from Makerere.
Yes, don't mind about the echo. Continue talking because you have left your TV volume high. It is giving you an echo. So please continue talking. Never mind about the echo.
Okay. I would like to agree that there are only 3 factors that qualify someone as a bona fide occupant.
My brother, you're listening to yourself and had given you information that you can just ignore the echo. So for that matter, I'm picking another caller. Hello. I have another call online. Hello. Okay. Looks like... Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from?
I'm Ronald Brick calling from Chenjojo.
Ronald in Chenjojo.
Ronald Brick calling from Chenjojo.
Yes, Ronald Brick from Chenjojo. That's my home district, Ronald. What do you have to say tonight?
We have had a series of the commission in Sokoto. But we want to know how far with the issue of Chenjojo Ganyinayo.
The issue of Chenjojo what?
Ganinayo.
Okay. All right. Now, Justice Catherine has heard your question. She will be responding shortly. Let me take maybe 2 more. Hello. Hello. I'm going to try to take 2 more callers, and please, let me give you some information that when you have the phone goes through, please turn down the volume. That will help to reduce the echo so that you can have a better conversation with you. So let's try again. I'm taking a call online. Hello.
Hello.
Good evening.
Yes. Good evening. How are you?
I'm fine. What's your name and where are you calling from?
I am calling from Kampala, Edgar.
Edgar, go for it.
Okay. Now I want to ask the commissioner to explain the difference between freehold. I mean to tell us if freehold can be on Milo land, and possible, why does Madivani have freehold on Busiro Milo land?
All right.
Where the tea estates lie.
Thank you for being precise and concise. Let me take 2 more, and then my guests will respond. I have a call online. Hello. Hello.
Yes, hello.
Good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Yeah, I'm calling from Kampala.
Yes, unfortunately, your voice is so faint that I'm struggling to hear.
Hello.
I have to pick another caller, and that will be the last. I have a call online. Hello.
Hello.
Good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Kaliro District, and I'm calling from Kaliro Town Council, plot number 1, Wako Road.
Wow. I like the exactness of the description of your place. Okay, what's your name, sir?
Yes. My name is Ahmed Salih.
Ahmed, you're on air.
My name is, my problem is Kaliro District annexed my land, police station took my land. When is Montgomery and her commission coming to sort that one out?
Okay. Where is some little humility, Ahmed?
Come again.
You want the commission to come and investigate that?
Yes, they have only surfaced to so that they have not come deep inside here.
Okay. All right, and I can understand. My producer is telling me quite a number of Ugandans are online now. Unfortunately, some lines are not very clear, and also the time is not on our side. But since you have raised 2 or 3 questions, I think those will do for tonight. Let me ask my Lord, Justice Catherine, to respond.
Thank you very much. I'll respond to some questions, and Commissioner Mary will pick up on the others and also pick up on areas that need to be emphasized. First of all, I'd like to thank the callers and the viewers for calling in. Edmund from Makerere agreed with me about the definition of bona fide occupant, and I bet he was also talking about a lawful tenant and all the tenancies that are found under the Land Act. So thank you, Edmund. If you're a Makerere University Law student, then you're doing really well. Thank you. Ronald Brick from Chenjojo asked about the issue of Ganyinayo in Chenjojo. And this is an issue that is still under investigation. It's a very wide issue, but it is one of those, I must say, that we were actually, we are proud to say that there are multifarious types of investigations that are happening, and I wouldn't want to preempt the investigation. So we have investigations actually on about 3 levels in that case. And so I would like you to keep your eyes on the ball and keep bringing up all the information as it comes along, because this matter is not over. And also keep your eyes open, because you're going to see a lot of things happen. But also let me say, because I think you probably come from there and you know, that it is one of those cases where we've had a challenge, a good challenge, in the sense that we had directed that the parties do not go back to the land because they were clashing while the commission is going on the Ganyinayo estate. And unfortunately, or fortunately, because I think it's a right of the party, one of the parties went to court, and the court issued a temporary injunction against the commission. So it's one of those interesting cases. As we investigate, a lot of things also happening alongside there, but we want, unfortunately for us, we haven't been stopped from investigating, so we are still investigating the full case. And like I said, it's about on 3 levels, so please keep your eyes and ears open and keep bringing up information about this case. This is a case on which one individual has evicted so many communities from their pieces of land, and the commission is grappling with this issue, and we're trying to get to the bottom of it, and I wouldn't want to preempt what we are doing as of now, but we definitely are dealing with it. The other one is Edgar. Edgar is asking, how can a freehold be on a Milo? Okay, first of all, I am sure that you all understand that a freehold is a form of tenure in Uganda, and it gives you, when you have a freehold, you have land in perpetuity. When you have a Milo, you have that, you're actually acquiring a piece of land that was originally given under the 1900 agreement. Remember, it was called a Milo because when the colonial masters were living, or were in the process of living, they rewarded a lot of the people who had worked with them with miles of land, and miles in Luganda translates as Milo, and so they got this Milo land. And whenever there is Milo, it's obviously assumed it's a kind of freehold. It's a type of freehold, but not quite a freehold, because it has in it an interesting customary tenancy because it has kibanja on it and all those rights and customs that come with a Milo. And the question the caller is asking is, can a freehold exist on a Milo? And then he asks a specific one, which unfortunately in this commission I haven't had any opportunity to deal with, whether the Madvani family can have a Milo on Busiro, on a Busiro estate. And like I say, can have a freehold on a Milo, a Busiro Milo. I am not sure because we haven't handled this as a commission yet. And I would welcome Edgar, if he has a complaint about this particular one, to file with the commission while we're still here. Because we haven't had to deal with this. If we had to, then we would look, because you see, for every case you have to look at its facts. You cannot address the facts of one case with another because no case is like another. But we've also we know that there has been multiple titling in this country. So it is sometimes very unfortunate to find a title over a title over a title. Okay. You can have 5 titles, which is irregular, and it talks about fraud. It talks about mismanagement, probably corruption in the land sector. This multiple titling is not a very. That's why we're talking about simplification. Why don't we have a situation where the government intervenes and removes a lot of these confusing things? All right,
our time is almost coming to an end. Perhaps if Mary, Commissioner Mary, you have something to add on to the callers?
Possibly the last one, which came from Ahmed Salih from Kaliro district. And he was asking when we are coming to Kaliro to solve the problem that he has with his land being grabbed. Ahmed, we'd thank you for your question, and thank you that you are looking forward to the commission coming. That for us is an indication of your confidence in the commission. As the chair said earlier on, we have so far received about 5,600 complaints to date. We have been able to manage and address about 1,500, which still leaves a large number of complaints. As has been known and mentioned by a number of people, we have a time frame within which to work. As we sit here now, we know that we have probably 2 to 3 weeks to go to the end of this current assignment. And while we would have loved to be able to come to Kaliro, you never know, we may still be able to, but that is the reality, that there is confidence.
Only 3 weeks remaining, you haven't even gone to West Nile.
We haven't yet gone to West Nile, and we hope to still be able to do that. And you remember, we also having to write our report as well. Kaliro. And Ahmed needs us, and so many Ahmeds need us all over the place. So we thank them for that confidence they have.
All right, maybe the last, what I have seen in your court, if I may call it your court, sometimes a witness comes, or maybe somebody is accused of grabbing land, and I see you ordering them, maybe take them, or maybe they get arrested, or they are confined. And I'm thinking, you're still investigating this person. He's still innocent. And the whole thing, to me, goes against the principle of natural justice.
Right. Thank you for asking that question. And I do try as much as possible to make it very clear that this is a commission of inquiry. And under commission of inquiry, we are guided by the Commission of Inquiries Act. And under the Commission of Inquiries Act, we are not obliged to be like a court. In fact, it is demanded of us to be an inquiry. And one of the ways an inquiry works is that we use interrogative methods. Now, one of the things that people don't see every day is you don't see what happens inside a police station. God forbid, we're not in Alufenya, as I hear about it. I mean, I've never been there. I don't even know whether what things they say about it are true. But we are an interrogative body. We operate more like the civil justice system in the continental Europe world. That's how our commission operates, in the sense that it is not like the way you go to a court and the lawyers stand on the other side and this one objects and the other one objects and the court is an arbiter. Here you're actually investigating. Now the difference between a commission and the police station and the commission and the court is that we are investigating, and we are one of our methods of inquiry as a commission, this particular commission, is a public open inquiry. So you can see what we are doing. Under the Commission of Inquiries Act, I think it's Section 12, you can be actually found guilty of an offense for answering questions in an improper manner. You can imagine, you can see that fine difference, an improper manner, or refusing to answer questions, or lying to the commission, or doing anything that doesn't help the commission to achieve what it is. The difference between an investigation, an interrogation, and a trial in the court is that we're actually dealing with a set of facts for which we have a background. You see, before the police takes you to court to say the magistrate should arraign you, they will have said you committed a crime. Now we're sort of a little bit like that, in a more civil way, really, if you think about it. And that's why it's a bit different. And that's why even the legal community finds it difficult to appreciate what we do. But it is because we are an interrogative body. And all of us, I am the head, if you like, the chair. But I'm just leading a team of equals. In way, the commission is investigating. The lead counsel is helping us to investigate. The investigators are helping us. All of us are doing one thing, investigating. Okay. I hope that is understood.
I suppose it is. What's going to be your concluding remark, Commissioner Mary?
My concluding remark is that we'd like to thank the people of Uganda, and particularly starting from the President of Uganda and the Cabinet, the Parliament, and the people of Uganda at large for the confidence that they have placed in us. They've given us a very big task, we know. We hope that we've been able to meet their expectations. We still have a few weeks to go before we come to the end. I know very many people are looking forward to the report and the recommendations that will come therefrom. But I'd also want to say that we want to thank the people for having given us the recommendations, because these are not only our recommendations, they're recommendations that have come from the people that we have consulted with. And we want to thank them for the cooperation. Wherever we've gone, yes, we've said we've had threats, but I must say that most of the times we have actually been warmly welcomed wherever we've gone. And when it has come time for us to leave, people have actually wanted us to stay longer. Okay. So we want to thank the people of Uganda for that confidence, and we hope that we'll meet their total expectations with the report that comes out. My Lord, what's going to be your parting shot? My parting shot is that I would like to again reiterate Commissioner Mary's words, Mrs. Ochan's words, that indeed we would like to thank the public for being very supportive, for turning out in big numbers to tell us and argue out their causes. But I also would like to thank particularly the Kingdom of Buganda for having goodwill towards us. Actually, we have an interaction going to happen next week between the Commission and the Kingdom of Buganda, and that is because of the goodwill that exists between the Commission and the Kingdom. And so I would, yes, appeal to whoever can to listen in and hear what the Kingdom has to say, because and the religious leaders, we have a few of them, Kingdom officials, coming to speak about the land issues and how they experience them. So again, we want to thank you, the public, because without you, our work would be in vain. You have shown us a lot of support. Thank you. And I thank the government for being very supportive. Thank you very much, my Lord Justice Catherine Bamgemereid, and thank you very much, Commissioner Mary Duka Ochan. I can imagine you have found yourself in an unfamiliar territory on the other side of the divide, but it happens also. This is my court. Thank you, Uganda, for participating in this, because you've been watching this program, and they have said the recommendations are coming. I hope this will